how's it going?
Haven't seen her yet.
Nothing?
Anybody sitting with you?
Thank
No,
you.
have a seat. Feel free.
Whose idea was to do this
All
live?
right, so I don't know. No one asked me about it.
I'm thinking as I see it, I go, yeah, we should probably touch base.
Oh,
Tom should
yeah,
give us
I
a
gotta
little
use that.
Okay.
And then you can go here.
Good question.
And then you can interact with the chat here.
Okay, alright, perfect, that's perfect.
See, I know a little bit. I just don't know how exactly
Which one goes first?
what the buttons do. But I saw the button. I was like, what the frick? See? There's 4 people connected.
Good.
Move on because it's not as
Alright. We'll get started in about 3 minutes. Still waiting for a few more. Hi Annabelle, how are ya?
I'm well, thanks.
And it said it's charging, so I guess we're good.
At the very beginning, and then
I
I guess
looked at
we
you,
don't
you were
use
just
this.
like, this isn't charging, so all is lost.
Yeah, I was like,
That's it.
solution.
It's all over.
It's all
Wait, no,
over.
I don't have to do it, but you do believe that.
I didn't think it was there.
Yeah, don't, actually, can you plug that in? So I used to keep it over there.
Yeah,
Plugged in,
the-
so
with
out of
the-
sight. She's using that.
You're using it as a
I tried to do it, she's not let's take it.
You're she's just trying to trick me. I was like, oh yeah, I brought the charger down specifically for this reason.
that's why I wondered how she was sending. She was funneling.
The iPad's fully charged though.
It should, but still, it's, I feel like it loses such power.
No, it's not using the iPad at all, really.
No, yeah.
I got another one in.
It's just the iPad.
Awesome.
The iPad's just a controller for the camera. The camera
I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think she's probably. I can't imagine.
I mean, it's not 5, it's delayed.
It's always
No,
delayed.
because
Okay.
that's what I did before. And
Hello.
Hi, I have a ton of stuff to return to you guys.
Awesome. She's the woman.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Jonathan, what is your extension? You know, I know, but I don't need you now. What do you want me to use your cell phone? This is my work one.
I was hoping to have because of this and because of what I do, I wanted to be.
No, what is it?
I am
That's fine. 719. Oh wait, 07.
Perfect.
Alright, I'm gonna thank you.
Alright, I think I already have it.
Oh, you might. Well, I'm doing it again. Alright, thank you.
That would be unfortunate.
Thanks.
Alright.
Thank you.
What's in my pocket?
Thanks for everything. Did you tell him there's another one in April?
Yeah, he had those dates too.
Oh, yeah.
Hopefully we'll get it by then, right?
Oh, you know what? Where is the volume here?
No. You don't touch that at all. See, it says please do that. In big, bold letters on orange paper. So you just, this is where the volume is. It always, you should be fine. It should be in the middle. But all you do is push it up or down.
Just because, for them to hear, it might be a little, but I might tell them they.
You might want to
check.
pause. Yeah. You might want to
We can check it. Yeah.
Is it correct guess Wi-Fi? Is that what it is?
I guess. See, mine just rolled onto it already because I've been here before.
And it'll, every time you turn it on, it'll go like, we just turned it off midway.
I feel like it's so crucial not to underestimate people with disabilities because we can never guess.
You can bring it up and down right there. Perfect. Just wave your hand in front of it and it'll turn back.
What did you say the password was? I thought you were. Oh, is it right there?
It's right here, everyone. Yeah,
Sorry. No caps?
No caps, just the exclamation point.
Alright, so I'm gonna give you my,
Your extension?
yeah.
Yeah. Everyone, so. There's no interest on that. Yeah, I'm just too tired to stop and take Henry.
I'm gonna put it next to the phone over there.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Or you can call me on cell, by your cell too.
Yep.
I don't even think you guys call me this way.
And before we get started, this is Jeanette. I know some of you guys have done our lensing library. This is Jeanette's face. That's what she looks like.
And
So
we-
when you call me, this is it.
Yeah. And we're getting a new system, which we're really excited about. It's gonna make everybody's lives a lot easier, so. We'll get, yeah, so the link, you should have gotten the link via email, but for this presentation, it's this bit.ly right here. So it's bit.ly/, I always mess that up, AAC literacy. And thank you, / it has to be capital AAC literacy. That's the link to this presentation. Did you guys get my email last night? Yeah, okay.
Is it in that or no?
It should be in the email last night.
That's why I didn't find it. It's yours.
Yeah, so I sent an email through ProTracks last night that has the, if you didn't get it, that means you weren't registered as of last night, but hopefully everybody signed up over there. But this is the link right here to get to this presentation.
I also sent out a link for
The live stream.
the survey and also the live, so
Okay.
you're gonna give them a few minutes at the end to fill out that survey. Alrighty? If you don't mind, cause we count
Can you
those.
see it, Annabelle? Thank you. And also there's a screen here too. if
Yeah,
that
there's a
helps
screen up in
anybody.
here, there's a screen back there too. You're all over the place.
Yeah, we're getting up there.
AAC lit
Fancy.
bit.ly, thank you,
Sure,
Jeanette,
one right
AAC
here.
literacy.
You can see closer.
Can I use one of your outlets?
Yes, just everybody, just so you all know, this is live streaming, so if you
Let me
don't
get
want
you
to
some,
be in camera, you know, you can go around this way, but we have a few people in other districts. Is everybody here? So he said there's 4 people, but he can tell on the iPad. That's your name.
Okay, here's the link for the presentation. Oh, back here by mine. I just wonder it doesn't function as a link.
I'll be back with some extra extension cords.
So people can also sit here in the front. Not today. So is everybody able to get to the PowerPoint, the slides with the bit.ly?
You all on?
I didn't get to this one. Did you copy and paste it? Yeah, I tried going off my email, it doesn't.
So just go to Safari, Sue.
I did.
Does
it matter if it's Safari?
No. But she's on an iPad. So go up here
Yeah.
and type BIT.
It's still not coming up?
No, it's turned on, let me log in now. I can log in because it tells me that it's open, but it's not working. He's like, there's nothing.
AAC capital letters.
It's like letters.
Yeah.
So I do have my laptop if you can't get on.
No? Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right, while Carol Ann is walking around to make sure everybody's on, welcome everybody. It's great to see you all here. My name's Nicole Natali. I'm a speech language pathologist from CREC and AAC assistive technology person.
And I'm Carol Ann Cormier, also speech language pathologist, AAC and assistive tech here at CREC.
So we're happy to have you all here. There's also, it looks like 4 districts live streaming. For those people live streaming, there is a feed to chat on YouTube Live. If you're able to chat and at least sign in, let us know you're here. That will be great. We are going to be assigning activities and you're going to be part of it, so we need to know who's here. We have a shared document we're all going to be working on. So please
talk to us on the YouTube Live. If that's not working for whatever reason, my cell phone is on the first. Okay, I see Anne-Marie from New Fairfield. And so I know we have New Fairfield and Richfield here. I know Region 1 was trying to be here. And I think we have Plymouth. Is anybody here from Thomaston? No? Okay, I think it was Thomaston was the 4th district. So we have 4 separate districts across the state live streaming as well. So you can always text my cell phone, my work cell phone too, Anne-Marie, that's fine, for the personal one, if you can't use the YouTube chat, because some people couldn't. Right. Just a little bit of housekeeping to remind you all, we do have our assistive technology lending library. Who's borrowed from it this year, right, with a show of hands? Okay. So we have a lot of equipment available. Well, actually, a lot of it's out. A lot of it's coming back in. It's supposed to be for short-term loans, 6 weeks or so, to trial certain tools with students. I know Region 12 right now is actually trialing a Revibe, which I don't know if you guys know. It's like a little bracelet that vibrates to remind students of things. They're not super expensive, but sometimes districts don't want to purchase things if they're not going to work for everybody. And so they're trialing it now for about 6 weeks to see if it reminds the student to maintain and remain on task. So we have equipment like that. We have a lot of note-taking equipment, a lot of iPads, iPod Touches for some students. They're borrowing an iPod Touch too right now, iPad minis. So I know they're in districts.
We have switches, mounts, switch adapted toys, some mid-tech AAC devices.
Yeah, so we'll put the link to the lending library on the last slide so you can look and see our inventory. It's actually going to get a lot easier to see the inventory next year. We're getting a whole new system, which is very exciting. But always don't hesitate to email us too if you need help getting access to the lending library. And Carolyn and I are out and about all over, so we don't ship. You have to physically come to CREC. But we are out and about a lot, so I do a lot of meeting in parking lots or at the schools when I'm going, that type of thing as well. So we're all over the state, so you don't necessarily have to come here or to pick it up or return. We can usually work something out as well. Okay, any questions about that? All right. So today is all about literacy and students with complex communication needs. You'll hear us say that a lot, or CCN. That's really the new wording for individuals who don't use speech to communicate. Nonverbal is a very informal term. It's not really used in the literature per se, just because it's not really descriptive. Most kids who don't necessarily rely on speech to communicate have some kind of verbal vocalization. So you'll hear us say CCN a lot, and that's individuals who require AAC or those who have complex communication needs. We love this quote, no student is too anything to be able to read and write.
Often we hear individuals talking, and not just for students with complex communication needs, but students who might be multiply disabled saying, they're too low to be able to read and write, or they're too this, or they're too that. And really the research does not support that no student is really too anything to be able to participate and to be able to get to the next level and the next level in reading and writing. So
I remember many years ago when I was in grad school, actually, I went to an AAC conference. I got to see Karen Erickson talk. We're going to talk a lot about her today. And I actually remember her saying anybody can read and write. And I've worked with individuals with the most significant disabilities you can imagine. And that was actually, when she said that, it really kind of shook me. And I was also, 22 at the time too. But it also helped change my perception of what is reading and writing too. It's not just someone sitting with a book reading, independently on a beach somewhere, which of course it is, but there are all different types of reading and writing, and we should always be striving to work with our students to help promote their literacy skills. And so this next clip is Caroline Musselwhite. If you don't know her, she's one of the big literacy gurus, AAC people. She's amazing, and she's talking here about expectations for students. Oh, can you pause it for a second, Carol Ann?
I feel like it's,
If you're live streaming and you can't hear it, you might just want to shut our sound off and click the link and play it, just so you know that for the live streaming people, I don't know how well the audio is going to come across.
so crucial not to underestimate people with disabilities, because we can never guess what's inside. And there are students who have such potentials, and students who might make a little progress that makes a big life change. And I think we can't know that even though this student didn't learn to read, because I tried to help him learn to read, he developed just this joy of story listening. And that enriched his life. Because we tried to write, we built his vocabulary. And so now he understands more things we talk about. He never became a writer, but his life was enriched in the trying. And so we can't underestimate and we can't stop trying, because we just never know where this journey is going to take us. And we never know what we're going to find along the way that we never expected. It takes us in a different direction sometimes. And we didn't get to Banff, but we found this other place that was pretty darn neat. So keep trying, and you'll get somewhere cool, and you will have progress, even if it wasn't exactly what you're expecting.
All right, so we'd love for you guys to just talk at your table or turn to your neighbor. I'm sorry, Tammy, you're over there, but maybe you can come on over here for a little bit. And really talk about what have been your experiences with students with complex communication needs and literacy. And now that you're thinking about what Caroline just said about what literacy is and literacy activities, have you had any positive outcomes, or do you have any anecdotes to share? So I'll give you guys 2 minutes and then we'll share out.
Yes, I know right now, and I'm asking more, but just because of the students I have now, they're already in their classes, so I do know literacy support for whatever it is they're doing. Even just the iPads that go like I mean, like, I've seen things like if it's doing this, like, yeah. Hi. Good, how are you? Maybe like a resource message chat. And last year he came, I think he got it from CCSA. Last year he came, he was 24. Like he did. He had 9 months. That would, know the chat automatically zips you as soon as you can find it. Zips you somewhere else. You don't have to either schedule it as an appointment. It's still always in she's the only one chatting, but he was so excited to keep things wrapped up, and then he would look at a person, he'd talk to and it's amazing. So this year he's watching, crazy. And I just started the alt program with him, which is amazing. They held him back. Okay. But he now he's calming. He's not
all right. So we'd love for you to share out. And again, if you're live streaming, you could chat here or send me a text. Let's start with this table. Any thoughts or anecdotes or experiences?
Well, just that I think it's easy to underestimate people, and
and like I worked with a little guy with a Nova Chat who came with 9 buttons and stimmed on it last year, and now he's got 60 buttons, and we figured out he could read. And you know, yes, maybe it's a different idea of reading and what his comprehension is different, but it's just, it was by presuming competence and not giving up.
And how did you figure out he could read?
He did something with his Nova Chat, like where I said somebody said something, or he wanted something, and he spelled something out, and he spelled it right, and we were all like totally like shocked, floored. I mean, and it was after being in, you know, a program for probably, it was last spring, so he'd been there since September.
Wow.
But like not doing much of, you know, not, you know, stimming on buttons and not doing much of anything. And then after we figured that, we just thought we'd play with it. And we asked him to point to, you know, like, oh, by the way, can you find this word? And we put words out for him, and we figured out he could touch the words, and then it totally changed his communication device then. And then it unlocked his willingness to, he found like a new power. So now he's increased his communication.
So an example similar to that, Paula Kluth, who does phenomenal stuff in the resources in the handout, she gave an example of a student that they would go visit family, and before they'd leave, he'd always run down to the basement and he'd be hopping on this rug, and then it dawned on them the rug was an alphabet rug, and he was actually spelling out goodbye and other things by hopping on the rug.
Oh my God.
So it was something that when they stopped and looked, they're like saying response, like, oh my gosh, this whole time he's been spelling out stuff that we had no idea.
And we said, you know, we used his name, we were like, you can read? And he was like, so excited. So excited. It was just like the best moment. I think for everybody that was in the room, all the teachers. And I think because people saw that, and the paraeducators saw that,
totally
and then everybody in the school saw that, it changed their perspective, not just for that student, but it changed their perspective for all the students. Like, you know, like, you're right, you never know, right? Baby steps. One, you know, maybe it'll take 3 years, maybe, but whatever. Or maybe it'll take longer, or maybe they won't get there exactly where you thought.
I mean,
like
we're lifelong learners. So to me, these are skills that we can work on for the rest of our lives. I mean, I had a reading group with clients at DDS that were from 50 to 70, and every single one of them improved in their literacy skills, and we only met once a week. So.
And I love that connection between, he was using a 9-message device, right? Then he started generating spelling. Then you all increased his grid to 60.
Right, we just thought we'd try it.
Right.
What could it hurt?
And what did you give him there?
What did you give him access to?
I mean, like, everything.
That's vocabulary, which is all linked to literacy. I mean, you know, the ability to generate. You're exposing him to more words and symbols. So that's super exciting.
Great.
All right, how about this table? Anybody have anything to share? Anything they connected to? No? Okay. How about this table? Did you guys talk about anything that you want to share?
So I am in a building with 3 self-contained classrooms, with a large quantity of AAC users, ranging from, you know, requesting using a blank text all the way to some higher tech devices, including NovaChat, Proloquotago, stuff like that. We had a student who was in a room last year, and it's a classroom for students with multiple handicaps, lots of disabilities, some of our rather low kids, and I think he really just wasn't being held to an expectation. And this year, the 2 other classrooms joined this building, and they decided that they thought he was better fit for one of the other classes, and he had an iPad with Proloquo to go on it. He really wasn't using it functionally, but he didn't have a keyboard. So when I put the keyboard on there, all of a sudden he just started typing off his words. He doesn't like using the folders. He refuses to use them, will not use them. But he can type full sentences. He uses word prediction accurately. He needs some prompting to use full sentences instead of single words, but when you tell him, like, you need to make a sentence, he can do it. So he can communicate a lot more now, and I think it's just that expectation in that classroom is much higher than what he was being held to in the other room.
We have an interesting example in Region 1. Do you want to talk a little bit about her? You want me to?
You can, well.
A student with pretty significant autism, but we all know she can understand so much more than she can express, and she has crushes on boys, and very age appropriate in certain things. It's got some challenging behavior, a lot of vocalizations that are just extraneous, and some perseveration. So over the years, we've tried a multitude of ways to get her to communicate with picture symbols for the most part. But she loves pictures, right? And so the problem is she would perseverate on pictures and then specific pictures, and it wasn't really a problem, but it did impede her progress and use of any AAC that we were giving her. Long story short, jump a few years, essentially after a while, she's been receiving literacy instruction, etc. And she all of a sudden, we were realizing, wow, she can really type into YouTube and she can find her really motivating, she loves car washing.
Has it those types of things are really helpful. But if you keep them, if you expect them to understand the higher level ones, then when they go to do the lower level ones, they're better at them. I mean, I really think that it helps them. Because I think they get bored if their comprehension level's 3rd or 4th grade. Right. They're going to be really bored with the reading out there. I mean, it's not great.
If they're
not great out there.
So you're saying if their reading level is at 3rd or 4th grade, but their comprehension is higher?
No, I'm saying, well, their verbal comprehension is higher a lot of times than their reading comprehension. And so what I said is that if I work with them on the verbal level and do it as a modeling, and then when I give them individual work, then I give them the lower level. But if I can get level text, that's really helpful to me.
Okay. So their auditory comprehension is a strength over their reading comprehension, which is true for a huge part of our, if you think about children with learning disabilities, that's certainly true for them. I've had kids with learning disabilities with their decoding, their reading comprehension is at like the K1 level when they're required to read the text. And I had one student, when the text was read to him, his comprehension level was at the college level. So for him, just having access to material in a different format shot up all his grades. So that's where, we look at Bookshare or Learning Ally or things like that for those students. And there's been a lot of great research that shows when those words are highlighted, that students' decoding skills increase. And a lot of kids have told me, one little girl, she was just precious. It's like, oh, look, the computer's helping to teach me how to read those words. So I'm like, you're right, So evidence-based practice, 90 minutes a day. And that's what you see in typical classrooms. But you go in your special ed classrooms or your self-contained classrooms, and how many kids are getting 90 minutes a day of reading? But yeah, we expect them to get it. Well, then we say they can't get it, but we haven't given them the same access that other kids are getting. And if you also think about your special needs kids, they're getting pulled out for therapies all the time, or it takes 10 minutes to go to the bathroom, or 10 minutes to get in the stand, or things like that. So we need to look at, and I'm not saying, 9 to 10:30 has to be literacy, but we need to look at their day and say, where can we tie literacy in so cumulatively it comes to 90 minutes? Can we tie literacy in when we're getting them off the bus? When we're, on the potty, when we're, getting into the stand, or how can we embed it in the whole classroom so that it's being done all the time? But if you did, a matrix or a running tally, and your kids aren't getting 90 minutes a day, we're further disabling them because we're not giving them the same access that kids without special needs have. 90 minutes sounds like a real lot, but
is this, I know that's a huge rule at the elementary level.
Yep.
Does that carry over, do you know?
So, to me, anybody who's not a competent reader should still be getting reading instruction throughout their whole schooling. So, if they're not a fluent reader in high school, they should still be getting 90 minutes a day.
They probably don't, cause then they don't have enough time to
They
get other credits.
don't get 90
But
minutes
but
a day
that's
now,
what I'm
probably.
right. What I'm thinking is, if you're looking at credits,
Right.
there's the whole way people look at reading changes from middle school
but
on up.
Again, if we're in middle school and high school and our kids are not readers, how are they even accessing that curriculum to get credits? And that's when literacy should be tied into every single one of those activities, building in those 5 components that are part of an effective literacy program, also as much as possible based on their interests, tying in things that Sue talked about.
And a group of kids that we would work with would be using text to speech. You know, things would be they would be listening as opposed to continuing
so
to
they're
learn.
getting that multimodalityness.
Not necessarily
so that's
some of the
part
other
of that would
pieces.
be part of their literacy, but they would still need formalized instruction. And I don't mean formalized where I'm pulling them out for Wilson, for our kids. I mean that we need to systematically look at where their skills are at, look at the information we're providing them based on those 10 components, and always thinking about how to bring that child to the next level.
Good point.
So I'm not saying they need literacy as one of their blocks every day, that it should be embedded. Yep, great, thank you.
Yep.
So, who is delivering the instruction?
Whoever's
think about
whoever's working with the
look like
student.
for your 90 minutes.
So it might be me at times as a speech path. It might be the paraprofessional during certain activities. It might be the regular ed teacher. It might be the special ed teacher. It might be the occupational therapist. It might be the physical therapist. Everybody should be delivering instruction.
Right, and as you'll see as you go along, a lot of it isn't just this formalized 90-minute per se. It's embedded in some of your activities. It can be embedded in your leisure activities or your activities of daily living, that type of thing as well.
It can be embedded in gym.
Yep.
You know, one of the best literacy interventionists I saw years ago was the phys ed teacher. And she just embedded literacy for all of her students throughout the whole phys ed period.
Okay, so this might seem like a dumb question. Please don't click on the slide. But you already did, right? So don't look at it and just try to think about it. Why is it so important to teach reading for kids with disabilities? I mean, without disabilities, but especially for our kids who have complex communication needs. I know it's a stupid question, but it's really not. Why? What are the big benefits to learning to read for our kids who can't rely on speech to communicate? So take a minute or two and then we'll share out.
Sorry about that. I got to bring one. Now, do you want me to get your
That's not yours? Is that Jeanette's?
That's a friend.
Oh.
I just kind of most AT involves reading and writing of some sort, right? Symbol recognition.
Finding a movie on it. No, I think it's just
complex communication needs, which is teachers, and it's because most ABCs are all about lecture, and that's about communication.
Reading creates opportunities for communication, it creates opportunities for growth.
We're talking about
It's all connected.
it is helpful.
So when we're talking, it's just really identifying them when they're gone. We're catching where you don't know where they're not. And so there's no historical component to it, there's no way to check it, there's no, because it's just, it's there and it's gone.
But if it's in writing and you can see it.
But I think for me, I think teaching the hardest thing, like one thing that I did to support a student who was in the functional skills class with middle school. Is I would go through the vocabulary with him and we would image all the vocab that he needed. Because otherwise, he might be able to decode the word, but he had no, and not even if we were talking, forget the multimedia, just the one, sure. And then we were able to create kind of a portfolio. Because he remembers specific words. Windows don't generate it on his own, but if he sees them, he remembers what it is, and he can match it. My mom looks better now that she's a teacher now. He's very limited in that regard, but he will read those if he likes the ease of it. So, you know, again, kind of function, function behind the science class.
That's one of the things that I find with the transitions is when they come to me and significantly delayed is that somewhere along the line vocabulary was given up. And that's what they need more than anything.
I know.
To be able to have a vocab bank.
I think the reading, the writing. Well, I think the reading was so great. Like but then you come here and you say, yes, Bob should spend time on it, even if he's not going to be a writer. Oh, he's not 5, he's in 3rd grade, so, but he's still carries his name.
Okay, so why should we teach reading?
Well, most AT stuff is symbol and word-based. You're talking about people using texting and all that stuff, and
oh, so you mean like emojis and stuff like that?
No. I mean like you were talking about using pro loco text to speech and all that stuff. So at the end of the day, it would be increasing their ability to communicate. If they had some of these skills, that they could access that kind of thing. And independence, right? If they can type a word, like you said, search on YouTube, if they can access something through the computer. And when I said symbols, I just meant like, pro loquo, uses symbols, but some of them are abstract symbols, which letters are abstract symbols, so the better.
Right. But so to better communicate, to better direct their own leisure, to better participate, could be why we might teach reading.
And you were talking about independence, but I think you were looking for a different, I know what you're talking about, but were you looking for, I think the word you were looking for is to be more generative, I think too. Was that what you were looking for? No, you were like, well, because when you were talking about the typing, so go ahead. Yeah.
Probably.
We did mention that, because then your message is then limitless. You're not limited to just what's there on the page.
That's right.
Not by whatever.
Great. So you're not limited to what I think you might want to say. And if you don't have any literacy skills, regardless of how well I know you, what is programmed on your device is what I think you might want to say. And even if you're my best friend or my child, I probably do not know all the thoughts in your head.
Right. I mean, I know my son's typically developing, but he asked me the other day if there was more woodchucks than buffalo in the world. And that's just something, like, how would you communicate that? Who would ever think of that? And but
good question.
Right, but it just, I don't know that I would have all that vocabulary in a device for a student with AAC, who's using AAC, so.
Or a lot of the other vocabulary he likes to use.
Oh, well, that, the potty humor is a whole other thing. Anything else? Anything from this table? Or did we cover?
We guys are doing like the opposite way with it, but like we were tired of these cheatings that I put this side, but then like reading a bus schedule, reading recipes, things like that, like making yourself more independent of that.
Yes, absolutely right. Like we use literacy all the time. And I don't think we realize how much we use it until a good friend of mine, when we go out with her cousin, because of macular degeneration, she's lost most of her vision. So everywhere we go, if she can't see it with her magnifier, one of us is reading it to her. And I don't know if we automatically open up a menu now. I mean, we don't stop to think, oh, I am reading the menu, or I am reading what that sign says in front of, you know, this thing I'm going to in the store, or I'm reading the labels when I go grocery shopping to see which one I want, right? It just has become automatic to us.
Right, and Laura in Ridgefield said for the discussion so that they can understand the world they live in, which is exactly what basically you just said, and reading is a pathway to writing. What else do we have there? Right, so that was the whole given potential to write written words. And the point I wanted to make is the student I was talking about in Region 12, when we're talking about the literacy that she has, does she always spell everything right? What do you think?
No.
No. But are her thoughts clear and do they come across in communicative context? Absolutely. And she generates things that we would never have known that she likes.
No, you don't even know what's in there. Like, it's
Right.
shocking. It's just amazing that how much she has in her head.
That is so cool.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Most of it's around boys, I think, but
typical for her age.
Yes,
though, right?
exactly. Yes.
So
cute. Yeah.
I had a student that I did an eval on when we talk about boys, and somehow it came up, Michael Strahan, and like she perked up. She was an eye gaze user, perked up. So I'm like, all right, well, obviously it's an interest. Let's design her eye gaze communication board. And like hot men, well, she was a high school kid, were one of the topics on her eye gaze board that she could then go to different hot men, with Michael Strahan being in the easiest one for her to access, you know, which then could link to other Michael Strahan things. And so she's in high school and the team's like, but you know, she needs to be like reading for the curriculum. I'm like, at this point, her curriculum is Michael Strahan. Like, we need to look at her interests. And this is a young lady who didn't consistently eye gaze for object choices. But when I popped up, you know, did a search for Michael Strahan images, she like boomed to the one where she thought he was the hottest in that image. So she was showing her strengths based on the interest and saying, I'm really sick of you asking me to look at such and such, or is this such and such? So, you know, that tying in the interest in things like that, so our student can show us what they're able to do.
We'll just gloss over this. This is a really nice study, relatively recent, about literacy interventions. There's a link to it on how they're effective. They were effective for young kids with speech and physical impairments.
Yeah, so what that study did was they reviewed all the studies that had been done.
Okay, so it was a review. Okay.
Yeah.
And so these were some strategies that they identified across all the studies, so that helped improve literacy. So I love seeing there the first one, which is modeling AAC use, right? Because how do typical kids learn reading? Right, through language, right, through print environments. So if our kids
to them
constantly talking.
Constantly. So I've always used the analogy, think of AAC as a second language. And I was reading something last night and they're like, it's even harder than that, because AAC is not natural.
Right.
I mean, it's just not. So whereas learning a second language is more natural. So think of it as learning a second language that's even harder than learning a second language for our students. We have to show them how to use that system constantly for them to get those ongoing constant models.
Isn't one of the issues, and I don't know if I'm in high school now, but back when I was doing preschool and kindergarten, we were constantly being told, wait to introduce the AAC devices, wait to introduce, they're going to develop language, we don't want to block them from it. I mean, has it changed now? Because what I see is my high schoolers who should have had AAC devices, you put protocol in front of them, and they've just as soon throw the iPad at them.
Right, yeah.
They don't want to use it.
Or kids that, in their eyes, they're verbal. In my eyes, I can't understand a word you say. And if you're waiting, so we'll get referrals to kids like 19 or 20. We're concerned because they're going to be going to work and nobody can understand them. It's like, well, how do they understand them for the last 17 years? So it's not, I mean, research really supports that the use of AAC does not decrease verbal development, and in fact, it has the opposite effect, in that if we give AAC strategies, as soon as we know that the child's at risk, they're more likely to develop verbal skills. So when I first entered the field, I got a lot of pushback from families and from professionals, saying, oh no, they'll become verbal. I'm like, we always work towards that. But at this point, they can't make their needs known verbally, so we have to intervene and give them a strategy.
That's really good to hear, because like I said, I work with transition students now, and I have currently right now 2 totally nonverbal or functionally nonverbal students who, and neither one of them, they both have iPads, they both have Telecom. They won't use it. They won't.
So the other thing is, I don't think our kids get enough modeling. So I don't even ask my kids to use it. I'm just using it in front of them. Some of my kids are sitting at the other end of the table, and hopefully they get a little closer to me as we go on. But I'm using it constantly. Well, I should be using it constantly.
Yeah, sometimes. But, and again, I wanted to harp on that modeling AAC use, because reading, literacy, language, all connected, and this is their language. And adapting materials, and I actually never heard yeah, go ahead.
I love this.
Go ahead, yes.
So subvocal rehearsal of words and phonemes. There's an approach called the nonverbal literacy approach that I like. That's kind of their focus. So it's not nonverbal in that I'm not talking, meaning that we can use it with individuals that are nonverbal. I'm pretty sure there's a link in the PowerPoint. If not, I'll put it on the resource. But that's what you're doing, is you are modeling for the child. You're sub-vocalizing the sounds as you're sounding them out. So what you're hoping to do is for that child to get a mental auditory image isn't the word, but kind of referent in their head with that image. So, you know, as we're sounding out pat, I'm pointing to, and it's like pat, pat. So I'm pulling it together, but pointing to the letters or moving the strips so they're seeing them. But I'm constantly modeling that, because our kids can't do it verbally. So we need to teach them in your head. Think about that word. Sound that word out in your head, and telling them that, you know, say it in your head, so that they're getting that constant. We're teaching them that strategy to help sound out words. Because what do we use as adults when we're sounding out new words? We're doing it in our head. If it's a real hard word, we sub-vocalize it. Still as an adult, I still sub-vocalize those words that I'm not sure. And then I may break them down into bits, things like that. So all those strategies we need to be modeling to our students.
And,
look, it was in there.
No.
Oh,
magic.
Put it in there.
The magic.
The magic of, so the contextual learning, the differentiation, I think the differentiation are things we're familiar with. A lot of things on here are differentiation, we're gonna talk about that, but that contextual learning gets back to that 90 minutes. If it's embedded throughout the day in contextual, I think we can achieve that 90 minutes for every child.
That vocalization though, if that student is being taught reading with another person, and that person is teaching them, say, something like Wilson or something like that, it's a good idea that you're doing the sounds the same way. Do you know what I mean? Like, so if you don't have that training, and a lot of people don't have that training, so, you know.
And using the same vocab when we're describing it, and absolutely,
Right. I mean, so like even like the basic fingering of Wilson is really, some basic things in Wilson would be really helpful to teach anyone who's then going to be, because if a student is learning within a classroom or with a special ed teacher, then goes to a speech specialist, speech language pathologist, and that person's saying the sounds differently, then that could be a real problem in the long run.
Great point. So
need to be on the same team.
Right. I know, you know, I see the fingers. I also do like pointing to the letter as I'm sub-vocalizing, because that's another strategy.
One's Wilson, one's Orton Gillingham.
So, but absolutely, and in one of the schools I go to, there's a person who's doing Wilson with the kids, and we keep on emailing her. We need to know what level the student's at. what sounds is that, what, you know, vocab you're using, because we do a lot of literacy in our sessions, and we want to be carrying over whatever it is that you're doing. Yes.
Okay, so this next slide, we just wanted to talk a little bit about the research behind pairing symbols with words for literacy instruction. So we see a lot of symbolated text. We call it that, symbolated text, where there's words and then the picture right above it. It is not shown to improve the literacy skills of kids. In fact, it can actually be the opposite.
Yeah.
So we'll watch a video about it. So this is tricky because we're talking about AAC, right? Who most of our kids are symbol users, and so we need to use that AAC for language, communication, vocabulary. It's linked to literacy, but when we're providing some additional literacy instruction, we need to be mindful of our symbols.
And really, this is looking at our text instruction, because there are other kids that the inclusion of some photos, some pictures can help in comprehension.
Right.
So this is really in teaching how to read that text.
Decoding, right, all those skills.
That is not beneficial, but that's not to say on their AAC system we take away the symbols because we want them to read text. That's a no-no, because research also shows that it's quicker to find desired vocabulary based on the shape and color of the symbol, more so than the symbol itself, but quicker to find it based having that visual there. Think about the Sunday circulars for the supermarket, Thursday circulars. We automatically look at the pictures first.
What is that?
Thursday.
I'm joking. I don't get a newspaper.
Neither do I, but I still get the Thursday supermarket things in my mailbox.
I'm joking.
So, yeah.
Right, so you look at the pictures first of the
We look at pictures first,
right.
yeah.
Annabelle, did you have a question?
Yeah, so I just need a little bit of clarity here in that case.
Yeah.
So, when you say symbolated, you said that's a great word, symbolated text.
Yep.
Are you referring to, say, do you know the Sherlock Center, all those,
Yep.
all the adapted texts on the Sherlock Center
Yep.
from the University of Rhode Island?
Yep.
They use the board maker symbols with the text underneath, adapting a bazillion books.
Yep.
So that's symbolated text?
Correct.
And that's not an effective strategy, or it is kind of sort of?
It depends on what your focus is for that activity.
Right.
So the Sherlock Center, those books and a lot of other books like a Unique or things like that, they've been adapted for a book that's a more complex level. So they are high interest, low complexity books. The content's been adapted. That the focus is on comprehension.
Okay. And participation.
It depends, right, so it depends on what the focus is on. When we are trying to teach kids how to read text, that's when the research supports that we should not include the symbol with that. Yes.
Yes. So it's really a combination. It is tricky. And when you think about typical kids, we don't present them with picture. I mean, we might a little bit, but then you take them all away. So, but you're going to see in the 10 strategies that we're going to get to after the break is that, of course, adapting text is part of our literacy strategies for enjoyment, for comprehension, for participation. But like Carol Ann said, when it starts talking about decoding and learning how to read those words, it's actually contraindicated. So we'll show you a video too of, I think it's our friend again, Caroline.
Yep.
I think that symbols for people who are non-speaking are absolutely amazing, and they're just such a life changer. And I'm so grateful to Roxy and Terry Johnson, and to Faith Carlson, and to Jackie Clark for all the symbol sets they developed, because they've made such a difference in the lives of so many individuals. But what I'm worried about is that we've forgotten the lessons of the 1950s. And I know that most of the people watching this weren't even born in the 1950s. So let me tell you about that research. They did research on rebus symbols. They added these cute little rebus symbols to words like cat and in and of and all kinds of words. And then they checked to see how much it was helping the students learn to read. And guess what? Not only was it not helping them, it made it worse. So we took a student who's struggling to read, and we made them struggle even more, because now what's happening is they're just looking at the symbol. And when you take away the symbol, they're toast. They can't read it at all. So if we want them to read the symbols, then we need to start de-symbolating. So for example, the word "the," I would never add a symbol with it, because the symbol is just an extra barrier. Help students learn to read the word "the" as a chunk, to see that as a visual symbol, as the word shape of that symbol. Then when we start taking away the symbols from the words that we want the students to read, then they do start, in fact, learning to read, many of them, if we're doing good literacy instruction along with it. Taking away the symbols isn't going to fix it, but it's going to help them be required to actually focus on those words. And for a beginning reader, that's fine to symbolate that word. It's not a high frequency word, and it's not an easily decodable word. And so go for it. Add that symbol above the word marble, but take away the symbols for the high frequency words that you want them to read. And if there's a picture support in the text for marbles, then again, take that symbol away. So just think being smart in when we use symbols, and even smarter in when we don't use symbols. That's my advice.
So she just described a perfect example of what we were talking about, Annabelle, with the compromise. That's still, you're still going to be expecting that kid to read those high frequency words, but it's okay to put marble. Do we really care that a kid, right at this point, if it's their emergent literacy users, to read marble? Probably not. So she's actually, even in her literacy instruction, telling you that you can use symbols for certain words. So there's a combination there. Any questions or thoughts?
I have another question. So, because I have made the mistake of when a child is learning, I've taken the words that they've learned, and I have taken it off, the symbol off on their iPad for some high frequency words to help, because I didn't know it was a bad thing to do. So should I put the symbol back on for their Proloquo?
So it
so it's
depends.
like it's like the word "can" and the word "I" and the word "is." I've taken the symbols off those words.
So I think for the high frequency word, the other thing with our AAC systems is they're always in the same location.
Yeah.
Right. So I would like, as you know, Carolyn said, like the and words like that. I would rather just have the text.
Even on the AAC device.
Even on like Proloquo or things like that.
And that's what I've, those are the words that I've done that with.
I would just look at which ones, but sometimes the symbol is really nebulous too.
Yeah. Right.
And it might not aid in access or recognition or comprehension.
Okay.
I think we have to weigh a lot of features. So
right. You don't want to remove them all, but maybe
absolutely. And I would never remove them all, because
yeah.
it's actually anything that's more concrete.
Yeah,
it's a lot faster for us to find it with that symbol there.
All right. Thank you.
And you use the word wrong.
There's no, we're not saying you're wrong.
I don't want you to feel bad about anything that you've done. You're giving your kids access to communication, you know, and there's, so just want to make sure you know that.
No guilt.
So, this is sad.
This was from a while ago, but still.
Right. 90% of kids with multiple disabilities never get beyond really the second grade reading level. So if we think about, for kids with multiple disabilities, really, those are the kids that need to read even more than other kids if they're gonna get somewhere in life. And I don't mean get somewhere, and I mean that broad. For them to have more independence and success in life, literacy's all that more important. And many of them get stuck at the emergent literacy level. So, it's really critical. So they may listen to stories, but maybe they're not actively participating in reading that text or things like that. So hopefully it's going beyond that. From the workshop I just went to them with Karen and David, it's not like it's a success across the country with our kids getting beyond that. So, yes.
Is there any information about the vocabulary, the number of repetitions, that words need to be repeated, the general? Because I remember a few years back, one of the reading consultants at the elementary level was talking about like the number of words you need to be exposed to, and how if you live in a home where your family speaks in 1 or 2 or 3 words in a sentence versus a much longer sentence or more enriched, so to speak, the differences with that. Does anyone address that as well?
I'm not aware of research like that for emergent kids. I mean, it would be great. Years ago, I remember reading that for kids with more cognitive involvement, so this is going back years ago, but for them to learn their first sign might take 18,000 to 20,000 repetitions, and literally I was like, the first sign. And I was like, oh my God. And then I'm like, yeah, but if I pick something like more, I mean, whenever I sign more, I never do it once. I'm always like a happy more person. And I do it all the time. So I'm like, boom, I got 5 in now, 5 off that tally list. But the positive was that the next sign took 2,000 less. And the next one took less. And the next one took less. So I viewed it as a really positive article, in that as my child's acquiring these signs, or their language, the more success, the faster they acquire. I haven't read studies, but I'm hoping it's the same correlation.
Well, I have a 3-year-old who's 3.5 now, who's been wearing a hearing aid for the 6 months she's been with us. So she's been signing more ever since, they've been able to sign more. And yesterday was the first time I was behind her. I know she didn't see me. I know she heard me. I said, get ready, wash your hands, it's time to eat. She spun her head around and went, eat. And that's the first time she's done it. So I'm sure when you think about how many times we've all said it, how many times it's been there, it's gotta be thousands.
Yeah.
And I know one time I was told, like, for a student with a hearing loss was 4 times the number. Whatever the number was for a regular ed student,
that would
4
make
times
sense,
the number for a non-typical hearing.
So I would, again, I haven't seen the research, but I would keep in my head at least 4 times the number for kids who are using, or maybe even more an alternate strategy. So.
Which goes back to you can't give up, you have to do more rather than less.
Right. I think, a lot of people, they're not using their system, and it's like, well, nothing's motivating on it, nobody's modeling it, we can't just give it to a kid, we can't just give them any tool. So, yeah. Did you have,
Yeah, no, I'm just blown away by that. Was it 14,000 models, 18,000 models?
18.
Learn the first sign.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
So then you certainly want to pick one that you can use a couple hundred times a day.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the core, right? You start with those core words, usually, those first 200, whatever, not that you would start with 200, but.
Okay, we're gonna watch a quick video about emergent literacy. We'll take a break, and then we'll come back and finish the rest out the next hour and a half. But the first part of this is just talking about emergent literacy and what does it look like. So we're just going to watch the first half of this, which is Carol Ann's David, talking about a success story for emergent literacy. And then we'll have you guys think about it, take a break, and then come back and talk about it.
I know, I call them like my first names, like we're buds. I just am in awe of both of them, Karen and David.
I can think of an emergent literacy success that sort of begins to move a child into conventional literacy. We were working in a preschool classroom serving children on the autism spectrum. One little boy, a 3-year-old, had an interest in print and hadn't shown us lots of conventions, didn't seem to recognize letters. He wasn't a kid who spoke. But had an interest. If we read books with him, he was very interested. When we brought writing tools into the play center, he was really interested. We used to do an activity called Sign In, and kids would write their name. I'd show up in the classroom to do reading and writing activities with them, and they would sign in. They would attempt to write their name. So in most cases, that meant they scribbled all over the paper. One day I brought in letter stamps. And Josh, before I had a chance to lay them out, I was getting everything else set up. Josh grabbed the J and the O and the S and the H, and he stamped J-O-O-S-S-H. And then he grabbed the exclamation point and did that. I'm not sure he knew what that meant. But that was a left to right, and clearly something he understood, not necessarily something he had learned. But what happened after he did that was he then said J-O-O-S-S-H. Nobody knew that he could talk. His teachers had told us he couldn't talk. His mothers told us he couldn't talk. So there's a kid that the ability to read and write actually led into more conventional communication. So his speaking followed his use of print.
The success story that I always go back to is my friend Jordan. Jordan is now a man in his mid-30s. He was the first student that I ever worked with in the capacity of research. And when I first met him, he was 11 years old, has severe cerebral palsy, has pretty significant cortical visual impairments, can't use speech to communicate, was the proud owner of a brand new Dynavox dynamic display communication device that he could not use yet. He was still working on a really consistent yes-no, and loved being around other people. Like, that was the thing. He was highly motivated by social interactions. Over the course of the next 8 years, so met him when he was 11, he has an amazing team led by a mom who is a very skilled special education teacher and assistive technology specialist. And having those combinations, the combination of those skills in a mom was a really good thing. Jordan got quality emergent literacy instruction for about 3 years. He was fully included in the general education classroom, and so that emergent literacy instruction happened in the context of general education 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade classrooms. People figured out how to have him engage in reading and listening with when other kids were reading for the purpose of interacting. People were working on helping him learn letters and sounds and how to use those letters and sounds to start doing some spelling. He was using his Dynavox with word prediction to start doing some writing every day. Fast forward to the point when he is 17 and gonna finish high school and continue working on learning, but do it through a homeschool opportunity. He's a reader and writer. I went to his graduation party, and he had created a whole display that was his memories that he wanted to share with all of his friends and teachers who would be coming. And the thing that he prepared special for me was this book that he had made, which was the first time that he was able to show the world that he was a reader and a writer. And it was a book about a frog, from a tadpole to a frog. And that experience when he was 11 or 12 years old was profound enough that that was on his display with a message that he wrote as a much more literate 17, 18-year-old that said, I wrote with Karen my first book. He now is the director of a documentary about old-time music in North Carolina that is making the circuit on documentaries. And you don't know that it's someone who has disabilities until the very end, when you see him in the end of the documentary going up on stage. And he is now traveling all over the Southeast and is a good enough communicator that he's going up on stage afterwards and answering people's questions live as they're asking them. Pretty dramatic change. And the name of the documentary is Broadcast, A Man and His Dreams, and you gotta see it.
So before we take a break, any thoughts on those two anecdotes? The second one, especially, I think about, he was 11 when she met him, and so how many years did they work on literacy with him? Right, 7, right, 6 or 7, and he was an they did emergent literacy interventions, which we'll talk about after the break, for 3 to 4 years. Never giving up on those skills, but just having a plan and continually working with him. So that's pretty, it's pretty encouraging for me, but it's also a reminder that some of this will take some time. Yeah, but what a difference it can make.
And that it's never too late.
Right, because he was 11 already. He was already in middle school, right, when she met him. So, okay, let's take a 10-minute break. There's soda machines and snack machines over there, and restrooms around the corner, and we'll come back at 1:50, and we will finish the second half.
So they're getting this. What? They're getting
yeah.
Well, with all the other pieces that go with it, to me, that's important. And it's a credit card. It's a credit.
And we're not gonna say we'll start. Can you go to my email?
And I remember the email and they told us about this. Some of those things that if it was funneled differently, they all are the expectational program based on that. And I can tell you a little girl, and I was just waiting for her, she can't.
So we have 3 big groups here that have been split up. And we have regional mature.
And it's easier because you can see the physical maturation happening.
Right, and
so then your expectations change.
Manchester's
You're
live
like, oh, no,
No, I'm with the live stream. That's right. New Fairfield. And there's someone from Torrington live streaming. Okay.
So first it was teaching communication. So this was a young lady that literally, with his eyes, people did not think she could understand what an optic was. And so she was telling us that actually her comprehension was much higher, but it was totally tied into what interested her. So, and I should have added, so the whole literacy focus changed to no more sight words for her, like find this, but let's read a story about like your friend, you know, so it's a really good one. So the whole, so bring it up after the break. So, but I was like, I mean, the picture she picked was like, right. Yeah, no shirt on. It's gorgeous. Yeah. So it just I think it opened the eyes of her team that this is a young lady. One, it's a very age appropriate, but two, she has a lot of interests that we're not addressing at all in her curriculum. And what we're asking her to do, she looked like a kid in shutdown.
Because that works.
You know, she just wasn't. I mean, basically, she was just sitting. And if you had seen, so very physically involved in a wheelchair, visually involved too, but then she used that vision to find her favorite bicycle.
Grab my wallet over there.
I think it changed attitudes, but it really changed the whole approach to how we're going to address it, how we're going to focus on all these activities. I mean,
I probably owe you money anyway. Here's a joke.
So I've had kids, and we'll talk about this when we get to some of the things, but I've had kids, they're writing,
I've been wanting
as
for
an
like
example, one of my buds,
for like
I was,
3 weeks. I don't know what it is. I think because I've been so good.
and I had read like Good Night Moon. I'm like, all right, great, we're gonna write your own Good Night story. Look around, and he looked to the window. I'm like, all right, Good Night Moon. Look to like Good Night Light, Good Night this, and I'm like, I'll write it down for you, but you need to tell me the story.
Yeah.
Then we did that, and then we ended up putting it into talking program. So we're going back years, so there was no part yet. But I just put it into like the talking word processes so that he could read it out. Like, all right, now we need to find pictures so that you can illustrate the story. You know, things like that. So, but he still became an author. I mean, that's what we refer to him as. So for him, is he at the conventional literacy stage? No. But has he written quite a few books on Tar Heel Reader and loves reading them with switches and letting people know he's an author? Absolutely, yes. But, and the other thing was age appropriate. Like once he hit high school, all my gifts were like, you know, Sports Illustrated, things like that. I mean, that's what he was in Harlem, you know, stuff like that. That was
Some of the concerts because of the summer. Okay, once you start to slow down.
No. Yeah, that's a huge one.
Yeah, it's like probably.
Should you phonological and then yeah, that's what I do. So that's
I'm not saying I'm
I don't think it's
Just put it right in the so we can start
the one word, the expression one word is
I think across the entire district.
33 to 36. I'm going to have it.
No, this is the
That was
E.
four. Yes. So go to the note.
Yeah, I never think they were
one
there.
word.
Not really.
I have, but texture.
That's ours. So just put it in. I'm going to have the woman do the core one.
What slide is the,
33 to 7.
no, where's the, no,
Yes.
Oh, I do it for
Oh, I'm even.
my kids are out. I do it. I do it for a lot of my kids, but they're not getting any other candidates. Cause all my stuff is so
33 to 36.
Some, like I did that, I attempted to sell with one of the.
Yes, it's called focusing literacy on communication. So it's slides 33 to 36. And you could say 20 live stream, so we know who's doing that, we all know.
It's not
American Writing House for the Blind.
It's a lot. Do 37 through 40. And then we're going to tell them the tools. So then, the next one is phonemic awareness.
Single standard score was a 90.
So that's going to be 41.
It's like, his head down, I'm a participant. Yeah. And then for the owls, if you look at the,
So it's the same
stuff.
Yeah.
There you go.
So that's 41.
His oral expression.
Scary. We can't just hide that off.
Yeah,
that's Friday.
That's it. You'd be done. Full sentences.
Phonemic awareness versus phonics. So let's do 59. And that's phonics.
Yeah, thank you. So we didn't
have them do shared reading, but that's okay. We can
and in that they didn't end up calling it.
We'll just make sure we talk about shared reading. And so we can do, there's 2, 4, 5 of them there. So why don't we split, because we're going to give them tools for the room that we have here, right, like the all and stuff. So let's do, we can split them up into the back right table. So we can split them up into 2.
so they're gonna, using words to teach those 3 or just phonics?
Do those 2 and then we'll do. Why don't we split them up? Why don't we just do 37, 47, and 40, 49? I'm sorry. They have, so that will be the back right.
Super open to doing anything that is on there.
Got it. Big time outside.
Okay, so that's back right too.
And we filled out a matrix on them, and I thought that's all we were submitting.
So this could be, we could do the balance one, so,
I've never done it.
yes, okay, that's slide 64.
You said, hey, where did you sleep last night?
270.
He came over, no one asked.
And let's get that
Yeah.
somewhere here.
And I'm like, so
live stream.
and it's so beautiful.
Yeah, for days, why would you just fill that one out? Fill it out together. And of course, sign is like, it's not the worst post. I thought that was planning this needs which I pulled out last week, they were 7 were like doing expository.
Right, so I actually concluded that with 5 and 6 too, so 7.
Yeah, that's it, I put them all together.
Okay.
Yeah, we did that last
5 and 6, and 71, and some of there was a lot of pictures.
Yep.
But I feel like when I said that, it's not
So that covers diverse material.
That's good, yeah, so let's give that to someone here, let's give it to, let's give it to this group, left.
Yeah.
That sounds
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, like what I just talked to you about, Lisa.
New Fairfield, right, and
Really?
Torrington, so Richfield is 2 more for the live stream. Perfect, right? So they just got paid for.
Yeah, and then if I could, so we're looking at,
and that's somewhere here, so we'll give it to the front right.
You were doing that.
I was wondering what's.
And I got my vision
I had
and
one,
then do
I was
the
gonna say
yours.
it was yours.
So 122 to 125. Oh no, to 126.
My father,
She just said, oh no, I'm just tired.
Yes.
I thought we had Monday off. I'm sorry. So that's the sound. So you work across your district, and that's going to be Richfield, live, other kids.
So are you an FLT?
Special. And
So I think we should at least spend like 5 or 10 minutes on that, and
But maybe,
It's
And it's like,
out of district.
with my still have
Sitting there
everything that you're hanging out like that. It's seriously we're following the exact same instructions. Didn't work with the question. That finally got to the school and said.
So we're gonna come back together as a group? I know.
But there was a year wasted.
And I would just like, people to share some thoughts on what does emergent literacy look like.
I just don't.
What are some emergent literacy skills?
So here's the definition of it, right? A range of behaviors related to reading and writing that happen before we have conventional literacy.
Recognizing your name.
Recognizing your name. Yeah, what else? What else is an emergent literacy skill? What does it look like?
Does this need to be plugged in?
What else?
Orientation of a book.
Orienting the book, absolutely.
Just looking at the words, even though you don't understand.
Yeah, visual attention to words. Annabelle?
Oh, beginning to understand that print has meaning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Anything else?
Well, emerging, right? So it's a continuum. So
Mm-hmm.
at what point do we say it's not emergent and it's
Conventional.
Right.
Where's that?
There is a crossover. We're going to show you a pretty helpful slide next.
Good question.
Yep. And did you want to clarify your Michael Strahan for everybody?
Oh, so the question earlier was, what does Michael Strahan have to do with literacy? So for this young lady, when we talked about she eye gazed to the gorgeous picture of Michael Strahan, she was a young lady that literally was a very passive, she was 18, so a very passive woman that people thought she could not even identify objects or things like that because they would hold up two things and where's a blah, blah, blah. She had basically shut down. So the fact that she knew who Michael Strahan was, could look at the most buff picture of Michael Strahan, so it demonstrated that eye gaze when we went to the images, really changed the viewpoint of some of the staff members. And I'm like, she's showing us what her interest is. So we need to have her write stories about Michael Strahan. Again, she used eye gaze, so it's like, so an example I gave with one of my students, when he was very young, we read Goodnight Moon. It's like, Greg, it's your time to write your own goodnight story, and he looked around the room as I wrote down. But he was the author. So she ended up like looking at different things in the room as somebody wrote. I suggested to the team they make her own book. They use something like Tar Heel so that she could be a published author, and she just like perked up. The thought about writing a book about Michael Strahan seemed really good to her. Now, was she typing in the letters or things like that? No, but she was now being an author, and that's something to expand on. You want to do math? All right, you know, it's your job to find 5 buff pictures of Michael Strahan. So really looking at her interest and tying in a lot of things. I mean, you know, who knows where Michael Strahan's lived? We can do geography. There's so many things, but tying it into her interest. And really, she looked like a different young woman. She was alert. Her eyes were open. She was paying attention. She was laughing, things like that. And, you know, we all have Michael to thank for it. So yes.
I'm sorry, so teasing that out a bit further, to go back to your Goodnight Moon example.
Yep.
So a couple of slides ago you talked about how these children with complex communication needs often don't read beyond the 2nd grade level. So say I've got a 7th grader, I do have a 7th grader now who maybe has at best 10 sight words. She's still reading at a pre-primer level. So reading.
Plus I use for a lot of my students because it's high interest, low complexity books. It's also what I use to write a lot of my stories now. So, you know, for one of my students, we just wrote a story about his school environment. They're all starting with the same sentence, in the blank, I do blank, but it's based on his interests. It ties in things he's familiar with. So it's using the same strategies or same concepts that we would use for emergent or those early readers where we're piggybacking, but now we're basing it on that child's interests and experiences.
So I guess I'm asking, is it okay to read essentially a preschool book to a 7th grader?
So I like giving kids the opportunity of picking their own books and have a whole variety involved. If my child's picking a younger book, I may then take that format and piggyback it and write something based on their interest.
She might adapt it in Book Creator or something like that, which obviously takes a little bit more.
Right.
time.
Right. But we are gonna talk about tools where literally that's fast. So the one I just wrote for the student on his school environment, once I have a staff take the pictures and email them to me, only took me about 10 minutes. So.
Imitating writing is considered emergent literacy. Remember we saw that video with David talking about scribbling. They were all trying, they weren't necessarily writing there. Those are all emergent literacy skills. We're gonna go pass through this because we wanna make sure we get to, we gave you some emergent literacy resources. So this is what we really wanted to get to. So this is gonna answer some of your questions. There's still a continuum, but on this slide on page, on slide 26, helps you differentiate between emergent interventions and conventional interventions.
So this is a slide that David and Karen again shared with me at a workshop I went to last year on literacy for individuals with significant disabilities. Because the question is, when do we work on emergent skills? When do we know when to work on conventional skills, which gets back to those 5 focuses that the National Reading Panel looked at. So, you know, if a child does not have these skills, are we working on the emergent or the stuff? So it's a nice, quick and dirty, like where do we need to start at for this individual?
Any questions about that slide?
It is easier seeing it on one of the big ones.
Yeah, it's kind of small. Does anybody know what predictable, so I didn't really know what predictable chart writing is. Yeah. Does everybody know what that is? Or Caroline, are you able to describe it well to people?
So there's an issue.
Okay.
Okay. No. My mind is trying to go back to, I know I have notes on it. Oh, predictable chart writing, not reading.
Yes.
Yeah, so that would kind of be like filling in a blank type of thing, where we go around the classroom and we do that. Yes. Which they do in a lot of like the preschool classrooms, and we kind of let all those practices slide, and it's like, why do we forget about them for our kids? You know, the kids come in and one thing I did over the weekend, or this or that, or, and then they may focus it where it has to be a W word that they did over the weekend. So that type of, yes. That type of writing. And so when we look at the research and we tie in writing, when we start that, I mean, David talked about the kid wrote his name, and studies have supported that. We need to tie in especially their name, because that's like something that just, kids have such well, they should have ownership over it. But again, we think about preschool. The kids all sign in when they come in. But those are things that we kind of let go by the wayside, but they're good practices. Preschool teachers do them for a reason.
Okay, so we're on slide 27, the next slide. We want you guys to spend about 5 minutes looking at this website and tool. So go ahead and click on this website, the Literacy National Database.org.
It just, if we don't know where to start, this is a great place to start for our students. What do we need to work on?
So what we'd like you to do is, we're all hearing right now that you have students at the emergent,
which is an emergency. Yes.
It's almost 3 o'clock, so sorry about that. The emergent literacy level, right? And so check out this literacy skills checklist. I think it's super helpful. And then we'll have you share out, did it give you some, help you think about where your students are and where you might start. And then if you, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, bookmark that site because they have some phenomenal resources on it.
Right. But so think about a student that you either have now or that you have had in the past, and go ahead and click this literacy skills checklist and go through it and tell us if you think it's helpful. Obviously you can't, write on it, but we'll give you a few minutes to explore it because it's a really wonderful resource.
You must have to change it up every year. So at the first consortium meeting, we figured out the next 3 weeks and that was starting.
Well, not all
Find out, right? So we don't.
Of course.
You don't. There's always an other.
So like a literacy shield.
We should be doing this more. We should be doing this.
Yeah, we've been doing this for about 3 years. We've had.
So where's the foundation?
Or is that someplace else, not on this chart?
Issues. You go back to.
Back to the website.
And then on the left side, they have the home.
Oh, there it is, I see it, thanks.
And depending on it,
I was just
nothing
like,
clear.
are you a specialist?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Typically like 2 weeks ago, we can go there.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, like, there's just so much. And I spent, I don't know how many hours doing this. And I said, this is what I'm doing? Like,
We don't spend a lot of time on that anymore.
I could have adapted this, I could have made this for that person.
We don't do that. Like, we don't have time to do that.
Primarily, I think we're supposed to do it 5 times.
Oh, still.
How am I gonna, I told them, I'm going to a conference tomorrow.
I know that was really stupid of me. It's, public school superintendents. I'll forward that to everybody.
So,
but I tried,
I hate when people use that.
years ago.
We have it here.
although I have to say I was sweating during this. Pretty profuse lips.
Alright, thank you for telling me that, because I'll forward it. Public school superintendents, and forget what the other one is, but thank you. Yeah. She called me out on that. I hate when people use acronyms, they don't say what they are.
What it stood for.
Yeah, and I would not even exactly sure. Connecticut Association of Public School Superintendents.
So, but she told me she wanted to honestly, I have 4 kids in there that back to the first time. Did it show that? Honestly, well, if you do it, then it was cost.
Yeah.
Snap them.
Yeah.
So feedback from the website. Had anybody used it before?
No.
Me neither. So I found out about it when I was with Karen and David, along with 150 other people. And I saw this site and I'm like, how have I not known about this site? Like, this is phenomenal. That whole sequential of the child has this. The thing I like about it is just about every kid I've worked with has some skill on there. And I hate giving assessments, and my poor pumpkins don't even score the first one. So I refuse to give assessments like that. So I love this, but it's also a great thing to print out your feelings.
This is awesome.
Steps to literacy.
Yeah, I like the steps.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Where'd you find that?
So if you haven't left with anything today, you will leave with this. So, but you'll leave with other stuff too. So I love the resources on here. The reading it, just like the ideas were just kind of brimming in my head as to things that we could do.
Oh, yeah, that's
with
perfect. There you go. Post it out.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Where
So
is that?
absolutely
When you go back
for
to the first
posting
page,
it up and
so there were the 2 choices, just click on the one on the right.
Okay.
yes.
That we're supposed to print that.
So again, yes, but giving, like, a lot of our guides are spending more time with paraprofessionals than anybody else. And unfortunately, we don't dedicate the amount of time to paraprofessionals in training as we should, because of logistics. Like a lot of districts I go to, the paras get there when the kids get there and leave when the kids leave there. You know, it's just, I don't think we invest enough in our paraprofessionals. But this is a great resource for paraprofessionals, because you can just highlight, when you're reading with Joey, these are the things we're working on right now. But if it's in this format, it's also giving them ideas of other next level skills. Absolutely. So, any other feedback on this website? It's going to take you a long time to explore it. Like, it just, to me, is so rich.
They even have a section for lesson plans.
Yeah. Right. I know. It's like, dang. When somebody does the work for me, I'm old. I just say thank you. You know? Yeah, right. Yeah, the lesson plans are there. It's just
professions and careers, right?
Somebody spent a huge amount of time giving us these resources. So let's just thank them and use them. Yeah.
That's awesome.
It takes me so long to implement new things. Like I'll come to something like this, and then like it almost takes me like a year to implement something. Really, really new. And I'm not very good at it. I think I'm, you know, who's so organized is Carol. We're all good at something.
So we have talked a lot about, you know, taking the child's interest into account. And that's something that is true for all of our students at all ages. Like when my kids with learning disabilities, when I introduce Bookshare or Learning Ally, do I ever do it with the textbook? No. You know, it's like, what do you love more than, you know, one of my kids I just saw loved ice hockey. And he's like, I hate Bookshare. And I'm like, well, all right, you know, while I'm here, let's just plug in ice hockey. It's like, oh my gosh, did you know there were like 50 books on ice hockey in here? And he's like, no way. Because he had only been using it for textbooks. I'm like, look, I don't care if you never use it for textbooks again. But if you go in here and read a couple of books on ice hockey, you're just going to make my heart so happy. Because I know once he starts using it for ice hockey, he's going to use it for textbooks. But if he starts with textbooks, he may never use it for ice hockey. Ice hockey will give him a love of literacy and give him success, which will breed success. So, studies. Each child should have about 100 books in their classroom based on their interest.
Oh my God.
Raise your hand if your classrooms with kids with special needs, each kid has 100 books based on their interest.
No.
Raise your hand if your house has about 100 books based on your interest. My house has about 100 books on knitting, about 100 books on sewing, about 100 books on this. Right. So what we have in our own homes, we don't have for our kids. I've gone into places where there's been no books in the classroom based on the kids' interests. So why would they want to participate in literacy? That young lady, do you think there were Michael Strahan books around the environment? There were when I left, but when I started, no, there were no books based on her interests. So some of our kids may gravitate towards the younger books, but it could be because that's what they've always had access to. I go to a lot of high school classrooms where they're reading preschool books. Well, they like them. I look around, well, what the hell? There's nothing else around here, you know? They've got to like them because there's nothing else. Every kid should have their area where they're building up towards 100 books. I'm not saying go out tonight and buy 100 books for your kid. I'm saying plug into Tar Heel Reader. You know, when I did that for Greg, the Goodnight Moon Kid, there's lots of books on Harleys, lots of books on cute babes at the beach, lots of books on volleyball, female volleyball. We got a trend here with his interest. But just in perusing it, I was able to come up with like 20 or 30 books based on his interest. That could be printed out.
Thank you, Caroline. This is a nice checklist for effective literacy instruction. Okay, so what we had wanted to do next until for the next 20-25 minutes or so is look at these top 10 literacy guidelines, the top 10 activities for literacy. Carol Ann's going to pass the book around.
So this came out of here, and again, Karen and David wrote it. But this is top 10 quick guide for inclusion. So they're top 10 areas in all areas, not just literacy. Karen and David wrote the literacy one. So I will pass this one around. And when we're developing this, what I did was I took those top 10 and I embedded the information that we knew, but also the format of it.
So what we want you guys to do, finally you're going to get to that note-taking template. So maybe you have the slide 6. I'll give you guys a second to get on the resource guide. Yes, we called it a resource doc, but it's just this note-taking guide.
Okay.
Right here, that's all it is.
Yeah.
So the link is on.
Is that book though on there?
I'm pretty sure that's on the end resources. I'm not positive. If not, it will be. Yeah, it will be.
So what we're going to do is split you all up into groups. What we'd like to do is, we know there was just so much information, we couldn't possibly cover it all. So what we're going to have you do is each group, so there's a number, 1, 2, write a brief description about those slides, and then on the next slide, on the next row, or column, I apologize, what we'd like you to do is, you don't have to create an action plan, but you're going to explore some of the resources that are in those slides, and if you've gotten something with a tool, we'll send them out to you guys. And what we'd like you to do is put the top 3 resources, 2 resources, whatever you find that you think your peers should really know about. So we're going to give you about 20 minutes or so, at least, maybe 25 minutes to do this, and we're going to assign it to everybody. So what we'd like you to do is read those slides, click the links, then provide a brief description so anybody who is reading it would be able to know, okay, what are the concepts behind your slides, and then what resources, tools, or strategies you thought would be really beneficial to teach your kids with complex communication needs. Does that make sense? Okay, so we've got number 1 here, literacy on communication slides. Andrea from Torrington is live streaming that. So you're going to do those, Andrea, and hopefully you get this and you're going to work on that. We had to assign the live stream people ones without tools here. So the back right table, you guys, you decide amongst yourselves, split into 2 groups. And so one group's going to do slides 37 to 47. And the other group is going to do 48 to 59. So you guys decide amongst yourselves in the back right. New Fairfield, slides 64 to 70, live streaming. Then we've got back left group. We kept you guys as one group. You can work together or divide and conquer. You guys are doing slides 71 to 97. That's why we kept you as 4, because there's a lot of slides, a lot of pictures in there though. Materials, who did we have? Tim and Tammy, you're going to do 98 to 121. Sorry, that's a... Then Region 1 live streaming is going to do word walls 122 to 127. And Ridgefield live streaming, I know you're in separate locations, but go ahead and do 128 to 138. And we must not have had anybody do diverse materials. Do you want to do that? Do you mind, Sue? Okay, thanks, Sue. And what we're going to do is we'll go around and give you guys some tools after you've looked at the slides.
It's because it's on Wi-Fi now? Yeah, no, it just holds on.
Like, I'm going to copy from my side.
Are you good at liner?
But I'll try.
No, that's okay. I get it.
Okay. Yeah. So,
Yep.
slides 128 to 138.
So I guess
72 to 92.
Yeah. So are we overlapping then? Because we're 71 to
So we need a brief description.
Hang on.
We're the ones right above her. We're 4, 5, and 6.
So you should just send 98.
So you should be, yeah, so maybe, oh, hang on one second, I screwed it up, 71 to 92. This is what happens when you change slides around. Alright, so 71 to 71 to 76 is one. Maybe you guys can even split up into a few groups if you want. So 71 to 76 is one. Then you could do 77.
But is it, what, I didn't see 98 on the number?
Yeah, they're big. 77 to 98. So if you want to split up to 77 to 98, you could do that too. Does that make sense? So the first one,
71. Looks like you're just off by one.
So hang on.
We might be.
Or we're off by
So
one.
we added in some slides, so
they should have it, yeah, but it should be.
we did just look at it, but.
Whatever, you can start with vocabulary.
So,
yeah.
So let's
so
summarize.
start at slide so there's the 71, right, through 76. So those are two, that's 4 and 5, every student and resources for adapting books. So do you, 3 of you could do that, or 2 of you, 71 to 76. And then the other one is the diverse materials, which is 77 to
We should just look at the slides first.
99. It seems like a lot, there's a lot of pictures in that. So you're 77 through 99, unless you want to.
Yeah.
Indirectly, like grabbing your indirectly.
Yeah, well, I think it's that's why I was happy with that, I think that's where I'm at. So that's something I do.
Well, this is just vocabulary.
Oh, okay. Well, that's what I do in my day.
So I think how I'm like, yeah, okay.
What areas do you
So how do you want to describe it without rewriting?
Just share whichever ones you see everything. And then that'll have other ones in there, just share 2 or 3.
So I guess we could do those first.
Just from the slides that we're looking at? Yeah, or the slides or the links, or the number of links on there too.
I mean, the other ones support each, there's a whole slide on just support each child where they are. Yeah, I mean, that's like basic.
Putting out some of the apps you mentioned.
Now that's kind of significant. Okay, I don't think about that, do you?
Now it's a 10-switch classroom. Some of them really
I put highlighters in the resource.
I don't know how that sounds.
So let me
stuff versus like, oh, because you guys are nice. I've never seen that.
Some of it's rude, some of it isn't as well, but some of it is.
Color animation. Animation, music, sounds, increases attention.
Yeah, here is I need to make things more accessible.
That looks really good. Handout on adapting books, but it didn't work.
I'm sorry, what,
This one looked really good, but it doesn't have adaptive book and after all.
That's we're already on number 4.
Are there any other like big ways?
And I'm filling out the resources, tools, strategies, I hooked them up.
Well, Carolyn wants to do a lot in adapting books.
Support student writings.
Or some adapting books, but we can,
We'll put like turning, adding the pictures. Yeah.
right, so, writing my own, truthfully, I've been using Tar Heel Reader almost exclusively.
Where did shared reading go?
It's in the handout, but, later on.
I wanted to spell it, make sure I looked it up.
T-A-R-H-E.
The what district? T-A-R-H-E.
Yeah, so UNC, so that's where the field is. .org. Tar Heel? Oh, got it, 'cause it's UNC. So, and this is something I bought from Teachers Pay Teachers that I use with a variety of kids. But when I started how silly have I been, in that she used the same template to adapt all her books for the things we done with that.
So that's web-based.
But, then like this, well, and there's adaptations, like the package, I bought it from Teachers Pay Teachers, it's right in here, but it comes with like 20 books. I'm like, but once you have the template, if that's it, so I've now built in consistency for my students, and it's made to work with the smaller ones. But I can already use template for Tar Heel, or for anything else, and you just slide it in, and then when you're done, like all my things are stuck on it, I stick it back in here. Like, I've been doing this for how many years, and it never occurred to me to like use the same template, you know, it's like with me and all this type of thing.
I think it was something like that.
So, this is old mine, but I always brought my camera with me whenever I work.
Actually doing the
Tar Heel, yep. So you can find books, or you can write books. So, yeah, so the speech isn't that great, because it's high interest books. So, and there's about 25 books.